There's something about divine timing that you can't schedule. You can't force it, you can't predict it. But when it shows up, everything shifts. June 29th isn't just another day. For someone listening, it's a line in the sand. It's the day heaven turns the page. You've been living in a chapter that's been testing your faith, stretching your endurance, making you question if God is still writing. But the Spirit of God sent me to remind you He's not finished. He's still writing, still redeeming, still rearranging. You are not abandoned in the edits of your life. You are not forgotten in the rewrites. God is the author of your destiny, not your pain, not your critics, not your fears, not the trauma. And when God holds the pen, no part of your story is wasted. He will write beauty out of ashes, power out of pressure, glory out of grief. So don't close the book too soon. June 29th is your reminder that God still has a plot twist in mind. Sometimes we believe that in order for God to do something powerful in our lives, we must have a flawless record, that we must have lived holy every day, made the right decisions, stayed away from people who broke us, and never detoured from the path. But that's not how our God writes stories. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for surrender. He's not waiting on your resume. He's looking for your yes. The power of your future is not rooted in the perfection of your past. It's rooted in the grace of the one who saw the end from the beginning and still chose you. Your mistakes are not disqualifiers. They are just markers on the journey. They are moments God knew would come, and He wrote the solution before you even made the decision. He factored in your detours. He factored in your heartbreak. He factored in the abuse, the rejection, the failures, the inconsistencies. And He still said, I've got a plan. We think God only writes stories with perfect people, but if that were true, none of us would be included. God wrote redemption into every story He ever told, and yours is no exception. When you look at Scripture, you don't find flawless people. You find flawed vessels who chose to believe anyway. Moses had a temper and self-doubt, but God wrote a destiny for him to deliver a nation. David had scandal and shame, but God called him a man after His own heart. Rahab had a past labeled by man, but God saw her faith and rewrote her lineage. Paul had blood on his hands, but God still put a pen in his spirit and had him author letters that would change the world. If God can use them, He can use you. He's the author, and authors have the power to determine how the story ends. It doesn't matter how many chapters were filled with pain. What matters is who's holding the pen now. What matters is that on June 29th, you woke up still in the story. You didn't give up. You didn't quit. You're still here. And that means God is still writing. That means He's not through with you. That means the things that happen to you don't get to be the final voice. Your past does not get to dictate your potential. Your brokenness does not get to silence your purpose. You have been fearfully and wonderfully made. And even when life broke parts of you, God still saw something beautiful in you. You are His workmanship, His poem, His masterpiece in progress. And every word He speaks over your life is filled with power. There is no requirement of perfection to be used by God. All He needs is a surrendered heart. All He needs is someone who's willing to say, I'm not where I want to be, but I trust the one writing this story. Your job is not to edit God's script with your fears. Your job is to trust that what He's writing will be worth the wait. You may have grown up in dysfunction, but God is still writing. You may have experienced trauma, but God is still writing. You may feel behind, unqualified, or forgotten, but the author of your destiny is not intimidated by what's behind you. He is invested in what's ahead. When you allow God to be the author, you stop striving for control and start leaning into trust. You stop measuring your worth by where you are and start measuring your faith by who he is. The author knows what you don't know. He sees what you can't see. He's already written the next chapter, and it includes healing, purpose, and glory. You just have to believe that the pen is still moving, that the ink hasn't dried, that this season is not the conclusion. You just have to remember that your story is still unfolding, and that every word God writes is filled with redemption, authority, and grace. We live in a culture that equates waiting with failure. If it doesn't happen fast, we start questioning God. If the doors don't swing open on our timing, we assume we've missed it or he's withholding something. But what if the delay isn't a punishment? It's a setup. What if the waiting room isn't a place of rejection, but a womb of preparation? There's something sacred about divine delays. It's in the delay that God develops. It's in the delay that he strengthens the foundation so that when the blessing arrives, you don't crumble under the weight of it. The delay doesn't mean the promise is denied. It means God loves you too much to let you step into something unprepared. God is a strategic author. He doesn't just write outcomes. He writes processes. He's not just the God of suddenly. He's the God of slowly. The God who molds you moment by moment, layer by layer, until you're equipped to carry the glory he's preparing for you. And sometimes that means taking the long way. Sometimes that means walking through deserts so you can handle the promised land with wisdom. Every delay in your life has been doing something deep beneath the surface. While you were frustrated, heaven was orchestrating. While you were grieving what didn't happen yet, God was aligning what you couldn't see. That relationship that didn't work out, it wasn't a failure, it was a filter. That door that stayed closed, it wasn't rejection, it was protection. That season that felt like silence, it wasn't absence, it was intimacy. God was close, he just needed you still enough to hear him, still enough to be transformed, still enough to recognize the weight of what he's calling you to. Delay teaches you to lean in, to trust, to obey even when there's no applause, to worship even when there's no evidence. Delay breaks the addiction to instant results and forces you to develop character, and character is what sustains the calling. You don't just need the blessing, you need the strength to carry it. You need discernment, endurance, humility, and maturity. God's delay often deposits those things in the hidden seasons. The waiting room becomes a classroom and God becomes your teacher. And when you let him teach, you stop resenting the delay and start reverencing it. Some of the greatest breakthroughs are born in places where you thought nothing was happening. But God moves in mystery. He hides purpose in what feels pointless. He wraps preparation in delay so you don't rush into a room you're not ready for. You're not behind, you're becoming. You're not stuck, you're being shaped. And everything that felt slow is actually God's mercy moving in sync with his master plan. It's easy to look around and compare timelines, to wonder why they're already walking in their calling while you're still in the hallway. But you don't know the weight of what they're carrying, and you don't know the glory of what God is still preparing for you. Don't rush a God who is both Alpha and Omega. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows what you'll need to endure the blessing and not just receive it. And because he loves you deeply, he will delay what you desire until it aligns with what you can carry. The delay has been divine. It has refined your vision. It has purified your motives. It has taught you to seek God and not just what he can give. You are coming out of this wait with depth, not just dreams. You're coming out with oil, not just opportunity. That oil came from the pressing. That wisdom came from the wilderness. That authority came from the places where it looked like nothing was happening. But now you know what it means to be kept by God. You know what it means to walk by faith, not sight. You know what it means to wait with hope, to labor in prayer, to build in silence, to worship without evidence, and that knowing cannot be shaken. The blessing you've been waiting for is not just going to show up. It's going to find you prepared. Because in the delay, God was developing you. He was growing your capacity. He was teaching you how to carry what's next without losing who you are. You've been positioned on purpose. The delay was never about denial. It was about destiny. God is writing a story where even the pauses are filled with power. Somewhere along the way, life convinced you that what happened to you is who you are. That the trauma, the betrayal, the abuse, the abandonment, the shame, that those things wrote your identity in permanent ink. The enemy is a master at planting lies in wounded places. And when those lies go unchallenged, we start agreeing with them. You start believing you're not enough, that you're too broken, that you're hard to love, that you're a mistake instead of a miracle. But can I tell you something, sis? What happened to you is a fact, but it's not your identity. God's word over you is truth, and truth is what defines you. You are not your pain. You are not your failure. You are not what they did. You are not the season that broke you. You are who God says you are. Before anything touched you, before life marked you, before people failed you, before trauma found you, God already named you. He called you chosen. He called you beloved. He called you his masterpiece. That name was spoken in heaven before earth tried to rename you with labels of fear and inadequacy. There's a war between heaven's identity for you and hell's narrative about you. One calls you forward, the other keeps you stuck. One says you are fearfully and wonderfully made, the other reminds you of every insecurity you carry. But you've got to decide who gets to author your identity. You've got to decide whether your identity is going to be shaped by your history or your destiny. If God is the author of your life, then you have to let him define who you are, not what happened to you. When Jesus called Lazarus out of the grave, he didn't just resurrect his body, he removed the grave clothes too. Because being alive, but still wrapped in what you died in, is not freedom. Some of us have come out of dark places, but we're still wearing the names those places gave us. Still wearing rejection, still wearing guilt, still wearing unworthiness. But God is calling you to strip off what doesn't belong to your future. You can't walk in purpose wrapped in old pain. You can't walk in destiny carrying the identity of your dysfunction. That divorce doesn't define you. That failure doesn't label you. That trauma doesn't get the final word. You are not what broke you. You are what survived it. You are what grew from it. You are the evidence that even in the darkest chapters, God was still writing. The moment you surrendered to him, he began rewriting what life tried to define you by. He started speaking life over the parts of you that were silenced. He started breathing identity into the places that had only known insecurity. You were never meant to be identified by your wounds. You were meant to be healed by his words. What God declares over you is not based on your performance, it's based on your position. You are his, and because you belong to him, his declaration overrides every label this world tried to place on you. Your worth is not negotiable. Your value is not up for debate. God stamped his image on you, and nothing life throws your way can erase that. This is why the enemy fights your identity. Because if you ever believe who God says you are, you'll stop settling for less than what you were created for. You'll stop accepting dysfunction as normal. You'll stop staying in rooms you've outgrown. You'll stop dating potential and start marrying purpose. You'll start walking like you've got oil on your name. You'll start speaking like heaven is backing you up. You'll start showing up like the daughter of the king that you are. And that kind of movement terrifies hell. God's voice is the only one qualified to name you. Not your past, not your pain, not the people who misunderstood you, not the chapters you wish you could erase. God saw all of it and still called you worthy, still called you appointed, still called you chosen, still called you his. You are not lost in your story. You are held by the one who's still writing it. And every time he writes your name, he writes it with power, with purpose, and with love. Because your identity is not what you've been through. It's who you were always created to be in him. There are some things you walked through that were not fair. Things that came out of nowhere and shook you to your core. Things that made you question if you were really called, if God still saw you, if you'd ever feel whole again. You didn't ask for the betrayal. You didn't expect the loss. You didn't see the attack coming, but it hit you hard. And the truth is, it almost broke you. It almost silenced you. It almost caused you to bow out of the destiny you were born to walk in. But God didn't let it break you all the way. And the reason he didn't is because he intended to use it. See, the things that tried to destroy you didn't catch God off guard. He's not surprised by the warfare. He's sovereign over it. And he knows how to take the fire that was meant to consume you and turn it into the fire that refines you. He knows how to take the pain that tried to paralyze you and use it to produce something powerful in you. You're not being buried, you're being planted. And what looked like the end is actually the beginning of your becoming. You may not see it yet, but that heartbreak was laying a foundation. That disappointment was setting the stage. That delay was strengthening your roots. What felt like destruction was actually construction. God was building you in secret, strengthening you in the shadows, teaching you how to carry weight in silence so that when he puts you on display, you're not crushed by the platform. That's the kind of God he is. He builds in the broken places. You don't get to the next level without passing through pain. Pain is the passageway. It strips away your illusions. It confronts your pride. It brings you to the end of yourself so you can meet the beginning of God's power. When life tried to break you, what it really did was break your dependence on everything that couldn't sustain you. It broke your false security. It broke the lies you believed about your worth. It broke the need to be accepted by people who couldn't even recognize your anointing. What was meant to break you is actually what's building your authority. You can't speak to pain you've never survived. You can't carry healing for others until you've walked through some things that required God to heal you. That's why the attack was so intense, not because you're weak, but because of the oil on your life. The enemy doesn't waste energy attacking people with no potential. He saw your future before you did. He saw your calling before you knew your name. And he tried to take you out before you could rise up and become a threat to darkness. But what he didn't expect was your resilience. He didn't expect you to keep worshiping through the tears. He didn't expect you to keep praying while bleeding. He didn't expect you to get back up with fire in your bones and vision in your heart. He didn't expect that the same place that broke you would be the place God used to anoint you. You've been getting built in places nobody saw, but heaven saw. Heaven took record. And God is about to put a demand on the strength that pain developed in you. What tried to break you made you wiser. It taught you to discern spirits, to hear God clearly, to set boundaries, to know your worth. What tried to break you taught you how to pray from your gut, how to worship from your wounds, how to fight in the spirit when everything around you looks like it's falling apart. You gained something in that storm that a textbook couldn't teach. You got oil that only pressing can produce. And that oil is what's going to sustain you on the next level. You don't have to fear the next season because you've been fortified by the last one. You're stronger than you think. You're more anointed than you realize. You're walking with authority that only comes from surviving the kind of pressure that should have taken you out. What tried to break you actually introduced you to the power of God in a personal way. It showed you that even when life falls apart, the Rock of Ages holds you together. This isn't just survival, this is strategy. God is using what hurt you to help others heal. He's using your testimony as a weapon. He's turning your private battles into public victories. And when he lifts you, it'll be on a foundation built by fire, tested by storms, and sealed by grace. We often think of destiny as a moment, a spotlight, a breakthrough that comes after all the struggle. We imagine arriving, crossing a finish line, or stepping onto a stage where all of the pain suddenly makes sense. But destiny is not just one defining moment. It's not something you stumble upon. It's not a mountaintop you climb and then rest on forever. Destiny is movement. Destiny is obedience. Destiny is saying yes to God again and again, even when you don't understand the route he's taking you on. Destiny isn't about arriving somewhere perfect. It's about trusting the one who's leading you through imperfect places. It's about surrendering your need for clarity in exchange for closeness. It's not a straight line, it's a walk of faith. It's waking up every day and choosing to believe that the author of your life is still writing even when the page feels blank. It's choosing to obey when it would be easier to control. It's choosing to pray when it would be easier to panic. It's choosing to be still when everything around you tells you to run. You don't find your destiny, you follow it, and you follow it by following him. There are no shortcuts in the kingdom. God is not looking for people who are chasing a platform. He's looking for people who will carry his presence, people who will choose purpose in the hidden places, people who will choose obedience even when it costs them everything. Destiny isn't found in the spotlight, it's forged in the secret place. It's built in the quiet decisions, in the moments where nobody's watching, but heaven is recording every step. We get caught up in the idea that once we hit a certain level, once the business takes off, once the ministry is launched, once the relationship is restored, then we'll be walking in destiny. But God sees destiny differently. For him, destiny is your daily decision to partner with him, to trust him with your plans, to let him interrupt your schedule, to let him transform your heart before he ever promotes your name. He is far more concerned with the depth of your roots than the height of your reach. Destiny is uncomfortable because it doesn't always look like success. Sometimes it looks like pruning. Sometimes it looks like isolation. Sometimes it looks like being overlooked, misunderstood, rejected. But even in those moments, the author is still writing. He's building something eternal. He's developing your character, stretching your faith, and anchoring your hope in him and not in outcomes. Destiny doesn't just come to the strong. It comes to the surrendered. And surrender is not a one-time event. It's a daily lifestyle. There will be days when trusting the author feels heavy, days when the enemy whispers that you've missed it, days when the weight of purpose feels like too much for your shoulders. But that's when you lean into the grace of the one who called you. That's when you remember that he didn't just give you a destiny, he walks with you inside of it. He's the God who goes before you, stands beside you, and carries you when your strength fails. He's not asking you to figure everything out. He's asking you to stay in step with him. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wake up and say yes again. Yes, I will trust you. Yes, I will obey even when I don't have all the details. Yes, I will believe even though I don't see it yet. Destiny is formed in those daily yeses. The world may never see those private decisions, but heaven honors them. And in due season, what you've built in obedience will rise in influence, not because you chased the promise, but because you chased the promiser. God never intended for destiny to feel like pressure. He intended it to feel like partnership. It's not about you being perfect. It's about you being present. Present in the process, present in the preparation, present in the daily sacred steps that lead to transformation. Every decision to forgive, to obey, to wait, to pray, those are the building blocks of your destiny. And on June 29th, as heaven leans close, God is not looking for your performance. He's looking for your partnership. He's asking if he can still write, if he can still lead, if he can still take you the long way so you can last when you get there. Destiny is not about a destination. It's about your daily yes to the one who authored your life with glory in mind. There are parts of your story that feel like footnotes, moments that seem small, insignificant, barely worth mentioning, seasons where it felt like nothing was happening, like you were invisible, like the promises of God were on pause. But can I tell you something about the way God writes? He doesn't waste space. He doesn't leave blank lines. He doesn't scribble in the dark. Every line matters. Every pause has a purpose. Every margin carries a miracle that your eyes may not yet see. When God writes your story, he doesn't just focus on the chapters that others celebrate. He doesn't just show up for the big wins, the open doors, the highlight reels. He shows up in the margins, in the waiting, in the hidden moments, in the quiet in-between spaces that no one claps for. He's a God of detail. He's a God who speaks even in the silence. And while you may be focused on the main storyline, he's slipping miracles into the places you least expect. The healing you didn't know you needed, it's in the margin. The strength that grew while you were waiting, it's in the margin. The revelation that came while you were sitting in uncertainty, that's a miracle from the margin. Some of your greatest breakthroughs won't come during a mountaintop experience. They'll come while you're in a hallway, unsure of what's next, trusting God anyway. They'll come in a moment of surrender, in a whispered prayer, in a broken place where all you have is faith. We think miracles have to be loud. We think they have to part seas, shake foundations, and move mountains. And yes, sometimes they do. But some miracles slip in softly. They show up as peace in the middle of chaos. They show up as wisdom in the face of confusion. They show up as a divine connection, a conversation you didn't plan, a door that opens without you pushing. These are the miracles that God writes in the margins, the ones that prove He's been working behind the scenes all along. The enemy wants you to ignore the margins. He wants you to believe that if it's not center stage, it doesn't matter. That if it's not loud, it's not powerful. That if you're not being seen, you're being skipped. But God does His best work in the margins. He formed you in a hidden womb. He developed purpose in caves, in wildernesses, in prisons, in deserts. He trained kings in obscurity before He ever revealed them to the palace. So if you're in a season that feels like a margin, you're in good company. That's where miracles take shape. When God writes your story, He's not rushing. He's not trying to get to the end quickly. He's intentional. He's weaving moments together that you'll only understand in hindsight. And when you finally step into the fullness of your purpose, you'll look back and realize that some of the most pivotal shifts happened in the places you almost skipped over. That conversation you almost didn't have. That opportunity you almost overlooked. That pain you thought was pointless. God was moving in all of it. Your story is not a straight line. It's filled with twists, pauses, edits, commas, and yet God's hand is steady. He's the author who includes divine footnotes, holy parentheses, and hidden plot twists that turn mourning into dancing, ashes into beauty, and dead ends into destiny. The miracles may not always be obvious, but they are there. And just because you didn't see them while they were unfolding doesn't mean they weren't miraculous. Some miracles make noise, others make impact. You are walking through a story that heaven already celebrated. God has already seen the end. He knows how this chapter closes. He knows what's waiting in the wings. And even while you're walking through what feels ordinary, He's doing the extraordinary. He's healing where you thought nothing was broken. He's protecting where you didn't know danger was near. He's aligning people, positioning favor, setting up encounters that will confirm everything He's whispered in the dark. Don't despise the margins. Don't overlook the quiet pages, because when God writes your story, even the margins have power. Even the silence carries sound. Even the ordinary holds a supernatural. He is not a God who skips parts. He's a God who saturates every moment with purpose. And just because you didn't plan for the margins doesn't mean He didn't pack them full of miracles.